What I have is recognition, the ability to see everything on the field, position the other team to death, keep the ball alive, and keep it moving forward. Then, at the right moment, knock them on their ass and own the field. The cover of a spring 1993 Sports Illustrated magazine featured a headshot of one of the most popular and winningest NFL quarterbacks in the 1980s, with a heading, "Kansas City, Here I Come." Joe Montana was traded to the Kansas City Chiefs on April 21st, 1993, and the fanfare began. Television anchors with bad hair and Kansas City fans in Zumba pants were buzzing with the news that a future Hall of Famer would be suiting up at One Arrowhead Drive. Let's take a look at how good Joe Montana was for the 2 years that he was with the Kansas City Chiefs. Before we get to that, guys, I'm currently being held hostage at my own house, and the only way that I will be let go from captivity is if you sack that like button for the YouTube algorithm. That way my captor could release me from my shackles and I could return to making videos for you guys once again. Now that we get all of that out of the way, break! Mic check 1 2 1 2. Before Joe Montana arrived in San Francisco and sealed the Super Bowl 16 victory, the San Francisco 49ers really stunk. San Fran had only won 2 playoff games and 4 appearances since the 1950s. So when a blonde-haired Pennsylvania 6'2" gunslinger out of Notre Dame was selected in the 3rd round of the 1979 NFL Draft, luck would change for those in the Bay Area for more than a decade. Joe Montana would win the passing title in 1987 and 1989 and was the NFC passing leader in 1981, 1984, 1985, 1987, and 1989. Number 16 would lead the 49ers to the playoffs 9 times and also would win the divisional championship 9 times in winning Super Bowl 16, 19, 23, and 24. In 3 of those Super Bowls, Joe Montana would win the NFL MVP. Joe Montana was more than a quarterback and had a perfect 4-4 record when it came to Super Bowl victories and didn't have an interception in any of those big games either. Not to mention that he was the comeback kid and the true definition of clutch. Remember the catch in the 1989 Super Bowl when the 49ers were down 3 points to the Cincinnati Bengals with just over 3 minutes left, and Joe Montana marched the San Francisco 49ers 92 yards, throwing the winning touchdown with 34 seconds left? Those are just a couple of Montana's clutch moments over his 16-year NFL career. Now, although he had been in scarlet, red, and metallic gold for 14 seasons, the 7-time Pro Bowler's time with the 49ers was quickly nearing the end. Joe Montana was now in his mid-30s and was absent during most of the 1991 and 1992 season with a bum elbow, and a young quarterback from BYU by the name of Steve Young efficiently took over the reins in Candlestick Park. Within the locker room there was friction, and Joe Montana requested a trade in 1993. So here's how it went down. In March 1993, the 49ers give Steve Young the franchise tag, and he is announced as the next season's starter. Joe Montana files an appeal to the NFL commissioner to void the final year of his contract, and it is denied. In April of 1993, the 49ers have a change of heart and offer Young to teams ahead of the draft. The 49ers want to keep Joe Montana, but no one takes the Steve Young bait. So on April 7, 1993, the San Francisco 49ers signed Steve Bono to a 3-year, $5.15 million deal, and Montana's agent is free to speak with other teams, as San Francisco is now willing to work out a trade with whatever team Montana chooses. The next day, Joe Montana works out for the Kansas City Chiefs. Joe Montana is on a plane to Ohio to tell the 49ers owner, Edward DeBartolo Jr., that he wants to wear a brighter red and gold. The owner doesn't want the breakup to happen and tells Montana that he is now the designated starter over the much younger and reigning NFL MVP Steve Young, and it would be Joe Montana who would begin camp as quarterback number 1. Then on April 20th, 1993, all is seed and the San Francisco 49ers trade Joe Montana, defensive back David Whitmore, and the 49ers' 3rd round pick in the 1994 NFL Draft. This is essentially the equivalent of the New England Patriots trading Tom Brady to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers while he was in his his early 40s and the Buccaneers giving up a first-round pick for him, Joe Montana would now be wearing number 19, although Jan Stenerud and Len Dawson had both offered their numbers to Montana. Everyone in the Chiefs' kingdom wanted Joe Montana, and their wishes came true. But was it worth it? Well, Kansas City was thrusted into the spotlight of the NFL, much like the way the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were this past year. Everyone was starstruck with Montana, even his own teammates. The Chiefs were really solid on paper. Then they would draft Will Shields in the first round and would get named to 12 Pro Bowls and eventually become a Hall of Famer himself. Then they added in another huge move by Peterson and company in signing all-pro running back Marcus Allen from their nemesis, the Oakland Raiders. Now, Marty Schottenheimer's Kansas City Chiefs were locked and loaded to win. In Week 1, the Chiefs traveled to Tampa Bay, and 3 passing touchdowns by Montana, 0 mistakes, and a couple of Nick Lowry field goals later, the Chiefs ran away with the 27-3 victory over a very bad Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. The Chiefs returned home with a 30-0 loss, the first time they had been shut out since 1987. After a bye week, the Kansas City Chiefs hosted the Raiders, with Montana finding the end zone via the air 2 times in the first quarter and went 7 of 9 with 68 yards before he left with yet another injury, this time a hurt hamstring. Marcus Allen would get revenge on his old team with a rushing touchdown, which would be his 100th touchdown of his career. The Chiefs' defense were the real stars of Kansas City's 24-9 win over the Raiders. They sacked Raiders quarterback Vince Evans 6 times. Montana returned for a showdown with San Diego, in which he resembled his early years to start the game with a 15-yard completion to Marcus Allen for 6 points. But Marcus Allen ran in a score late, and the Kansas City Chiefs barely escaped the Chargers and would head into their second bye week of the season. The Chiefs would travel to Miami, but Dan Marino was out, and the second-string QB in Scott Mitchell surprisingly lit up the Kansas City Chiefs for 344 yards. Montana and Krieg split time, with Montana going 10 of 17 for 90 yards, yet Kansas City never recovered and would lose 30-10. Up next was the Kansas City Chiefs sending an invitation to Brett Favre, yet Joe Montana didn't play a snap of this game. It was all Kansas City's defense, as Derek Thomas took down Favre twice, and the Chiefs secondary looked amazing, intercepting him 3 times, and Kansas City improved to 6-2, which led to a critical matchup against the Buffalo Bills. The Bills had been to the last 3 straight Super Bowls thanks to Jim Kelly and company. The great news for Kansas City was Montana was back. Joe connected with Marcus Allen on an 18-yard pass that tied the game early. The Chiefs' defense held Thurman Thomas and the Bills' rushing attack to only 43 yards. The secondary intercepted future Hall of Famer Jim Kelly 3 times, and the Chiefs rolled to a 23-7 victory and an 8-3 record. In Seattle the next week, Montana sparkled with 20 of 30 passing with 239 yards and not a single mistake. Derek Thomas had a fumble return for a touchdown, and the Chiefs won 31-16, and their playoff hopes were bright. It was another road game and another tough test in Denver against John Elway. Montana seemed to be very healthy and had 2 touchdowns, going 17 of 30 for 237 yards. However, it was a battle of Hall of Famers, and Elway won by rallying Denver to a 27-21 victory. And the next week, we saw the comeback kid become the comeback men. After all, Krieg would help as well. The Chargers would lead the Kansas City Chiefs 17-0 when Joe Montana threw 2 passes, both for touchdowns, to David and Burden before injuries caused him to exit the game. Krieg then propelled the Chiefs to 28-17, and Kansas City's defense held the Chargers, and the final score read 28-24 Chiefs. The final game of the 1993 regular season was at home against Seattle. Joe Montana earned a Pro Bowl nod by going 18 of 28 for 210 yards. The Chiefs were victorious 34-24. The Chiefs would officially make it into the playoffs as the number 3 seed and would play the Pittsburgh Steelers in the wild card round, which would be played in Kansas City. And the game started like it had far too many times, and still down 24-17 at the start of the fourth quarter. However, in 1993, the Chiefs also had Joe Montana, and in the final seconds, he marched Kansas City to the Steelers' 7-yard line, and then it was a 4th and goal when Montana would find Tim Barnett in the end zone for the game-tying score. The Chiefs, to the delight of their fans, would win in overtime. For the divisional playoff game, they would travel to meet a red-hot Houston team who had won 11 straight games. Joe Montana was ready, and although down 10-0, he threw a beautiful pass to cut the lead. Houston would convert a field goal and Montana found J.J. Burden via an 11-yard gem for a score. And before you knew it, Kansas City was up 21-13. However, Warren Moon marched the Oilers down to get Houston within 1 point before Montana would drive the Chiefs down to the 20-yard line and hand it off to Marcus Allen for a rushing touchdown and would result in Kansas City being up 28-20. The Kansas City Chiefs were headed to the AFC Championship game in Buffalo. Then Montana's age and reps would catch up with him, as he would leave the championship game early and the Kansas City Chiefs could never get ahead. They would lose 30-13, but Montana proved that when he was healthy, he could still play. He spread the ball around to everyone that 1993 season. Davis had 52 catches and averaged more than 17 yards per catch. J.J. Burden had 51 receptions at a 14-yard average. There was the rushing option as well. Marcus Allen would earn NFL Comeback Player of the Year award by rushing for 12 touchdowns and 764 yards. The offense was 8th in the NFL for points scored, and the defense had Smith with 15 sacks, Thomas as a Pro Bowler, and their corners Lewis and Mincy together had 11 picks. For the 1994 season, Montana returned strong. He passed for 315 yards and 2 touchdowns for a 30-17 win against the Saints in the NFL opener. Then he would invite his old team, the 49ers, to Kansas City, where Steve Young and Joe Montana would both throw 2 touchdowns, but Young would also have 2 interceptions, and the Chiefs would come out on top 24-17. Then, Hall of Famer Joe Montana emerged and had one of the greatest comebacks that ended the Chiefs' miserable 11-year losing streak in Denver. The Chiefs were down 4 points, and in the final drive that took 1 minute and 12 seconds on 9 plays, Montana passed 8 times, handed off to Marcus Allen once, and on the final play, Joe Montana connected with Willie Davis for the 31-28 win. Then, the 9-7 Kansas City Chiefs would have to travel to Miami for the wild card game. It would be Joe Montana's final game ever. Montana would strike first with a 1-yard pass to Derek Walker for a 7-0 lead and would pass for 314 yards, of 2 of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Montana went 26 of 37 for 314 yards and 2 touchdowns, including a 57-yard bullet to fullback Kimball Anders for a score. Marino went 22 of 29 for 257 yards and 1 touchdown. However, Montana had a late-game interception that made all the difference. The Chiefs were down by 10, and on Kansas City's next drive, a Dolphins defender ripped the ball from the hands of Marcus Allen, and the Chiefs' season along with Joe Montana's career ended. Well, although he was banged up and a little worn for the journey, the 2 seasons that Joe Montana was in Kansas City certainly brought the spark back to Arrowhead Stadium. Montana said he might have even tried to pull a Tom Brady if it wasn't for injuries. Montana revealed to USA Today host Mackenzie Salmon that he regretted retiring when he did. Well, if I didn't have a shoulder replacement, I might still be playing at the age of 64. Even to this day, I look back and regret that I left the Chiefs even with 1 year on my contract, but it was more of a physical thing for me. The injuries that I'd had, the concussion that I had the year before, was really one of the worst ones that I had. Looking ahead at my family and the ages of my 4 kids, and I was missing a lot with them. I really wanted to be able to do physical things, which I'm still limited now, after all. I made the right decision for me at the time. Let us know if you want us to cover any other stories like this in the comment section down below, and make sure you sack that like button for the YouTube algorithm. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.